You'd think with 2 Republican senators, 7 Republicans to 2 Democrats in the House of Representatives, a Republican governor, and state government supermajorities, Tennessee might have been a so-called red state its entire history. But up until a few decades ago, Tennessee was a Democratic stronghold.
Tennessee was blue for a long time, well over a century.
Really up to around 2000. The way we voted in Tennessee was influenced by the Civil War, for over 100 years. If you lived in East Tennessee that sided with the Union, you were a Republican. If you were in Middle or West Tennessee and sided with the Confederacy, you didn't like Abraham Lincoln because he was a Republican, so you became a Democrat.
Then in the 1960s, social change and the civil rights movement started a shift in American politics. Conservatives whose families had long been Democrats became disillusioned with the party of FDR and Truman, and the Republican Party took full advantage of the anger across the Solid South.
Nixon's Southern strategy had a huge impact in Tennessee. Although there are multiple issues embedded in the shift, the Vietnam War, it was dominantly race. There's no question about it. Southern strategy played on Southerners' fears of the change in the racial structure in Tennessee.
Still, although most of the South turned deep red over the next 30 years, Tennessee was still a state that could go either way.
Tennessee had this reputation of a Howard Baker, of Al Gore Sr., the politicians who, regardless of their partisan stripe, were able to build bipartisan coalitions.
Tennessee had been kind of a swing state in presidential years.
Democrat Al Gore followed his father's famous footsteps and party affiliation into the U.S. House of Representatives in 1977, and then into the U.S. Senate in 1985, where he remained until Tennessee voters helped elect him vice president to Democratic President Bill Clinton in 1992. 7 years later, Gore failed to win the presidency after losing Tennessee.
2000, if Al Gore had been able to carry his home state, he would have been president. Florida would not have mattered.
So what exactly happened in that 8 years?
There was a wave of supermajority takeovers across the South.
Everyone was mad in 1994.
Certainly the Newt Gingrich shift was really big in Tennessee. There was a heavy focus on the Republican Party standing for business.
The wedge issues hurt the Democratic Party in rural areas: guns, abortion.
This shift from blue to red continued into 2010 with the election of Governor Bill Haslam, and then 2012 when Republicans won supermajorities in both Tennessee's state Senate and House of Representatives for the first time in more than a century.
These were yellow dog Democratic areas dating back to the 19th century, quite frankly. Were primed, ready for a partisan turnover.
You can drive down the streets in some of these rural counties and look at all the closed up shops. They didn't think that Democrats cared about them.
As a historic Tennessean, even though most Tennesseans would say that race has not been an issue in this shift, I would posit that it most assuredly has been.
Will Tennessee stay deep red? Only time and the next several elections will tell. Dave Stripling, MT10 News.